In today's video, I'm going to show you a really cool tip that solves a problem every Unity developer runs into. It's something that's easy to use and easy to implement in just about any kind of project, and it really applies to any kind of game or even non-game project that you might be working on. The technique you're about to learn will also allow your game design to be a lot more flexible. You'll be giving your game designers the tools that they need to really make a great game and to do it without having to come to you for code every time they want to make a minor change. Now, if that all sounds a little bit crazy or you're like, I don't know what this means, just hang on for a little while because I think that by the end of this video, I really should have expanded your view on game development and given you something that you can really use going forward in almost every project that you do. It'll really make a big difference, I think, for you. So please just follow along and don't forget to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe if you like this, because then hey, everybody else will learn these cool techniques and make cooler stuff too. And if you have questions about it or just some comments about things that you think I missed or just want to learn more about, please drop them down below. All right, let's get started with the problem. The general problem goes like this. People start to build out games and they build it out relatively simply. They think about it as, hey, we're going to build this game, get it working, make it work right, and later on we're going to add in a couple more levels and start expanding on it. But then when they go to expand, they start to realize that things aren't quite so easy. They can't just reference stuff together. They can't just kind of link things together the way that they want to without restructuring and reorganizing their entire project. Another one of the problems that we're going to solve is the fact that designers usually want to do quite a bit of stuff when they're developing a game. If you're working with somebody who's a game designer or somebody who's just really creative and artistic, they want to do all kinds of crazy, cool things when stuff happens. If you kill an enemy, they want to have all kinds of cool stuff happen. Maybe some light starts flashing over here and a little mechanical thing moves across the screen and some particles play. They want to be able to do all kinds of crazy stuff. And they're going to constantly ask you to add these crazy things to the game. You've got two options. You can either manually start coding these things in every single time. You could say no, I guess. I guess that's option number two. And I guess I lied. There are three options. The third option is to use this trick that we're about to go through and give them the ability to do quite a bit of that on their own. So you're going to solve two major problems with this and some other ones that you'll see kind of along the way and probably really find just solutions, or I guess you'll find that this is a solution to a lot of problems that you come across in your own code and in your own projects. So let's get started with my sample here. Right now I've got a simple game where everything is all in one. I've got some characters set up, a light set up, 3 different characters that I want to be able to click to kill and then have them pop up some text on the screen. I've got my text objects already set up. If I go to my game view and just click them on, you can see I've got a little message that says, hey, the enemy was killed. Or maybe when I click on this big one, I want some message that says you win to pop up. Or maybe it's when I kill all of the enemies, I get the you win message. Or I want something to happen there. Pretty easy for me to hook that all up. I could create a simple click to enable script that allows me to click on the NPC and make the text appear. But what happens down the road when my project grows and I actually need to start splitting things out? Maybe moving my UI into a separate scene or having things that are in different scenes interact with each other. Say I've taken my event system, canvas, and camera and moved them over to a new area. Suddenly these prefab references aren't going to hang around. So how are we going to solve this problem? Well, the core of it comes down to scriptable objects and a really great tutorial on how to use scriptable objects to create your own game eventing system. After you finish watching this video, you should definitely go check this tutorial out. It's a really great written tutorial that goes step by step through a lot of the things that I'm going to cover and some stuff that I'm not going to talk about today. Before I go into how this system all works and how you can recreate it, let me show it in action, show you how you can hook it all up and just how simple it is. So here I've changed up our scene just a little bit. Our click to enable script is now a click to kill script. And if I hit play, I should be able to actually click on these guys, watch them die, and see some text pop up. So how does this all work? How is it hooking into this UI element that's in a totally separate scene? Well, let's take a peek. We'll dive into the click to kill script and take a look at how it's all put together. So in our click to kill script, you'll see that we have a single serialized field for a game event named onDied. That's the thing that we're going to magically hook into when our character dies. Let's see how the death works first. It's relatively simple. We have a single Boolean value for whether or not we're dead. When we click on the character with our collider, so on mouse down will just fire off whenever we click on a character that has a collider in 3D. So if the character hasn't already died, we call our die method. In the die method, we get our animator component, set the dead Boolean to true to trigger the animation, and then we fire off the on died game events invoke method. That's what we're doing right here on line 18. And then on line 19, we finish off by setting the dead variable to true so that we don't die multiple times. So how is this game event working? What is invoke doing? How does that somehow magically hook into a UI element that's in a totally separate scene? But let's go take a peek at the invoke method. I'll click on it, hit F12 in my editor. So let's examine this game event class. What is the invoke method doing? What is it exactly, since it's not a mono behavior, and how does it work? Well, the first thing that we want to note is that it's a scriptable object and not a mono behavior. That means that we can't add it as a component to one of our game objects. Unlike the click to kill script that we just drag right on, the scriptable object needs to be created a different way. And you can see on line 4 kind of how we create it. We add an asset creation menu using the create asset menu attribute. We give it a name, and then we can optionally give it a new file name. Let's see what that looks like when we've created a scriptable object and we want to add it to our game. If we go to the project view, I'll go to my game events folder, right click, choose create, and choose game event. Because I have game event as my menu name, that's showing up at the top of my creation menu. I'll name this NPC died. And now that I've created it, I can see it in the inspector, and I can go assign it to that character. So if I go select my character female right here that has that click to kill script, since I've removed the old game event, I need to now assign a game event because it's missing. So I'll take this NPC died and just drag it right into there. I can also hit the little search box and find all of the events that would fit into that slot. Now that I've got that done, let's go take a look at how it actually invokes. We know how to create one. What's the rest of this script actually doing? So we'll go take a look at our game event script and see how it all works. So here you'll see we have an invoke method, and it loops over all of our listeners, and then it calls the raise event method on those. So what's a listener and how are those added in? Well, right here on line 7, you'll see that we have a hash set of game event listeners. It's a little bit different than game events. In fact, they're quite a bit different, but they're really tightly coupled. They link together, and they're kind of how the magic all works together. So what's a hash set? I think we should cover that really quickly first. A hash set is just a simple collection, just like a list or an array, that we can add things to, but we can't add the same object to it twice. The reason that we use a hash set here instead of a list is just to avoid accidentally listening to something multiple times. If we're registering for a game event, we don't want to accidentally double register for it. So using a hash set will prevent the same listener from listening to an event 2 times. So how does a hash set help us, or how is it actually getting used or filled in? Let's take a look at line 15, where we register our game event listeners. The register method just says, hey, listeners.add, which literally, because it's a hash set, prevents it from getting the duplicate. And then the deregister just removes it. So all we really have here is a list of game event listeners that we're adding into this list here, or this hash set, and then calling raise event on. This is actually a very simple observer pattern, and that might make sense because, hey, this is an event, so we're just implementing our own, implementation of the observer pattern. Let's go take a look at the game event listener now and see how raise event works, because that part must be complicated, right? That's got to be where it gets hard and really difficult to use. Well, let's go see. We'll click on raise event, hit F12, and take a peek. Well, here it is. The raise event method, as you can see on line 11, actually just calls another invoke method for a Unity event. If we look up here at our serialized fields, we've got a game event that we're listening to, and then we've got a Unity event that we're actually going to act on or do as our thing whenever the game event fires off. So again, the way this works is the game event listener will listen for a game event and then fire off or perform a Unity event. Now, the way that it listens for these game events is in our awake method, we call the game events register method. Remember, the game event is a scriptable object that's at the project level or in the project view. So there's only one reference to it, and we're just registering for that when we awake. And then when we get destroyed, we deregister for it because, hey, we don't want to call an event back on something that's been destroyed. That's probably a gone object that probably shouldn't be firing these methods off or shouldn't be getting the events anymore. So we deregister or remove it once we're done with it or once this object is no longer around or no longer loaded. So how does this all hook up and work in the editor? Well, let's go set it up for the NPC death text. Here I've got some text that I just want to show up when an NPC dies. I want it to say, hey, the enemy was killed. To do that, I'm going to add a game event listener, and then I'm going to select the game event by hitting the little search box and choosing NPC died. I could have also just drug it right up there. Then I'll hit the plus button to add a Unity event, take my Text Mesh Pro text, drag it right down there as the target, choose the function, which will just be the Text Mesh Pro text or Text Mesh Pro UGUI dot enabled, or the Boolean enabled right here, and I'll set it to true. I'll save my scene, then I'll hit play, and we'll click on one of these guys, and I expect my event to fire off just like that, and the text to pop up. Now let's go through the process of adding another one. I've got a boss death text here that just says, hey, you win, like you beat the boss. Let's add in a listener for that. We'll add a game event listener. And maybe now I don't want to listen for a NPC died. I want to have this be a more specific NPC, like this big blue boss in the background. I'd go to my project view, go to my game events, or my game designer would. They'll right click, choose create, make a new game event, and say, hey, this is the boss died event, or boss died event. And as you can see, you can start to build up a whole variety of these different events that fire off when different things die. There's no reason we could only fire off one, too. We could, of course, fire off as many events as we want if we so decided. So let's go see how we would hook this up. I'm going to choose the female boss. I'll assign the boss died event to her. And then I'll go over to the boss death script. And on our game event listener, we'll just hook that into boss died as well. Then I'll hit the plus button, and I'm just going to enable the text here again. But remember, this is a Unity event. There's nothing that stops me from playing an animation, running a tween, or doing a dozen other things right now. I don't just have to show text. This is just one of a million different things that I could do. With a Unity event, I could really do just about anything. And in our game event listener, we could always customize it and have it do things that a Unity event still couldn't do. If we run into something a Unity event can't do, make a custom game event listener that can do that. Or if it's something that's so common that you're doing that you don't want to have to hook in a Unity event for it constantly because it's something super repetitive, then also consider writing a separate event listener. So let's try this out. This should now turn on the boss death text when I click on the boss and kill it, and turn on the enemy, enemy killed, yep, and oh, I didn't get the you win script. So let's see why that happened. It's right here. I didn't check the box right there. If I hit play again, check the box to actually enable the Text Mesh Pro script or the Text Mesh Pro text UI element here, then bam, I win. So let's talk a little bit more about the extending of the game event listener. I briefly mentioned it just a moment ago. I want to show you one way we could extend it so that maybe we pop up text for a short amount of time. Perhaps I've got listeners that I want to run a thing and then maybe wait a little while and then run another thing, like pop up some text, wait a second, and then hide the text. How would I go about that process? Well, here is actually a perfect place for inheritance, and here's where I would create a subclass like a game event listener with a delay. Let's take a look at how this is set up and how it differs and how it kind of makes this an easy to accomplish task without overcomplicating our game event listener. So the first thing to notice is that it inherits from game event listener, which means that I also had to make a couple minor little changes to support that inheritance. Let's go take a real quick peek, see what those are. The only difference is I made these two serialized fields protected so that they would be available in subclasses, and we made the raise event virtual so that we can override it. Let's go back and take a look at where we're doing that and how that all works. The other two things we've added are a serialized field for the delay, and then another serialized Unity event for the delayed Unity event. Remember that we fire a Unity event when we raise or invoke our method, and then we want to wait a little while and then fire the next one. So this will be the second Unity event, or the second set of Unity events, because remember, you can stack these up and have as many things as you want in the Unity event. So what do we do here? Well, we register and deregister, and technically we don't really need those in here. I don't know why I added them. Let's delete them. Just make sure that we know that because they're already in the base class, I don't need those in there unless I happen to override or re-implement those methods. So what is it actually doing differently? Well, in our raise event method that we're now overriding because it's virtual, remember you need the virtual keyword there so that we can override it. We are calling our first Unity event just like before. Then we kick off a coroutine because remember, this game event listener is not a scriptable object. It's mono behavior that's on our text mesh pro object or on some other game object, whatever it is that you're using it for. So we'll start a coroutine, we'll wait for the delay, and then invoke the other event. That's it. Nice and simple, right? So I think you can start to imagine some scenarios where you can set up your own game event listeners that do maybe different things that aren't always just firing off a Unity event. But most of the time, what I found is that just giving the ability to use a Unity event is the most valuable thing because people will start to do it. And then what you can do is look for areas where people are recreating the same Unity event, rehooking up the same thing, doing it over and over in kind of a repetitive process. If you see that that's a pattern, then consider making a new script for it. But until then, give them this flexibility. Let them kind of hook things up and hook up events and have multiple different things listening for events and doing all kinds of stuff. Because don't forget, not just one listener could listen for something. We could have a million things listening for every single event. Performance might get really bad, but you get the idea. Anyway, I hope this is helpful, and I think that this should make a big difference in your projects. There are a lot of other things that you can do with scriptable objects, but this is probably the easiest and most valuable and I guess most impactful one that I know of, and that really I've seen kind of push people's game development faster and just make things easier for them to put together. So if you like this kind of thing, again, please just share the video somewhere, grab a link, go share it up on Facebook or Instagram or whatever things you use, or hit the like and subscribe button. Also, thanks for everybody on Patreon. I still amazed every day that so many people just support the channel and the stuff that I'm able to do and just put it out there. So I really like it. I guess, of course, I really like it. Yeah, I love doing this stuff, and I hope that you guys like it too. So if you do, just hit the thumbs up button, and thanks again. Goodbye.